The massive chamber of the Galactic Council stretched endlessly in all directions. Sergeant Jake Rodriguez stood at attention in his dress blues, feeling small beneath the towering alien delegates. His boots clicked against the crystalline floor as Ambassador Chen whispered last-minute instructions. "Remember, Marine, you're here as security detail only. Don't speak unless spoken to," Chen said, adjusting her formal robes. Jake nodded, his jaw tight. He'd seen action on 3 continents back on Earth, but nothing had prepared him for this. Around them, beings from 100 different worlds filled the chamber. Some floated in anti-grav pods, others slithered across the floor, and a few seemed to exist as pure energy contained in geometric shapes. The Zephyrians dominated the central platform. Their leader, High Chancellor Vex Thor, stood 12 feet tall with skin like polished obsidian and 4 arms that moved independently. His voice boomed through universal translators. "The primitive species from Sol 3 requests full membership in our council," Vex Thor announced. A ripple of what Jake recognized as laughter spread through the assembly. "These creatures who have barely mastered fusion power dare to stand among us?" Ambassador Chen stepped forward, her voice steady despite the mockery. "Humanity brings unique perspectives and determination to the galactic community. We've survived against impossible odds and united our planet after millennia of conflict." A serpentine delegate from the Korthax Confederation hissed. "Every species claims uniqueness. What makes these hairless apes special? Their military killed each other with nuclear weapons less than 2 centuries ago," added a crystalline being whose name Jake couldn't pronounce. "They still consume other organisms for sustenance like savages." Jake's hands clenched behind his back. Every insult felt like a physical blow. He'd watched good men and women die defending Earth from pirates and raiders, while these pompous aliens sat in their ivory tower. "Furthermore," Vexthor continued, his 4 eyes focusing on Chen, "your species lacks even basic psychic abilities. No telepathy, no energy manipulation, no dimensional sight. You're effectively blind children stumbling in the dark." The Etherian delegate, a being of pure thought energy, pulsed with amusement. "I've scanned their military representative. His mind is so simple I could rewrite his entire personality with a casual thought. These humans are barely sentient by our standards." Jake felt the mental probe like ice water in his skull. His training kicked in, the meditation techniques Earth's scientists had developed after first contact. He built walls in his mind, crude but effective. "At least they make amusing pets," laughed a delegate from the Void Dancers. "I've seen humans perform tricks for food on the frontier stations." Ambassador Chen maintained her composure, but Jake saw her hands tremble. "Humanity has contributed medical breakthroughs, artistic innovations, and diplomatic solutions throughout the frontier sectors. We've earned consideration." "Contributed?" Vexthor's mandibles clicked in disdain. "You've scavenged our discarded technology and called it innovation. Your ships are laughable imitations of real engineering. Your soldiers carry projectile weapons like cavemen throwing rocks." The council erupted in laughter again. Jake noticed how they didn't even try to hide their contempt. To them, humans were a joke, barely worth acknowledging. His dress uniform felt heavy, the medals on his chest, earned in blood and sacrifice, meaningless to these creatures. A small gray alien Jake recognized as a Proximan stood. These were humanity's only allies, a modest race that traded with Earth. "Perhaps we're being too harsh. The humans show potential." "Potential?" The Korthax delegate's tail whipped dismissively. "They can't even leave their solar system without our navigation technology. Their bodies break down in normal gravity fields. They require constant atmosphere, specific temperatures, and chemical fuel just to survive. They're the galaxy's most fragile species." Jake watched Ambassador Chen try again. "Our adaptability is our strength. Humans thrive in environments that would kill. Silence, Vexthor commanded. The Council has heard enough. Humanity's petition is denied. You may continue to exist under our protection as a protectorate species, nothing more. Be grateful we don't classify you as wildlife. The chamber filled with cruel laughter again. Jake saw tears in Chen's eyes as she bowed. The meeting was ending. Delegates already turning away, dismissing humanity like an annoying insect. That's when everything went wrong. Alarms suddenly screamed through the station. The crystalline walls flickered, showing images from outside. Ships Jake didn't recognize, angular and predatory, surrounding the Council station. Energy beams lashed out, and the station's shields flickered. "Pirates?" someone screamed. "No!" Vexthor's voice carried real fear now. "Devourers!" Jake had heard whispers of them, a nomadic species that consumed entire civilizations, stripping worlds bare. They'd been quiet for decades, but now they were here, at the heart of galactic civilization. The chamber descended into chaos. Delegates scrambled for exits, their earlier arrogance replaced by panic. The station shook as weapons impacted the shields. Jake moved on instinct, placing himself between Ambassador Chen and the nearest wall as it exploded inward. Devourers poured through the breach. They looked like mechanical nightmares, part flesh, part machine, all hunger. Their weapons fired streams of something that dissolved matter on contact. A Zephyrian guard simply ceased to exist where the beam touched him. Jake didn't think. His training took over. The M45 carbine on his back was in his hands before conscious thought engaged. The magnetic rounds might be primitive by galactic standards, but they were reliable. His first burst caught a devourer center mass. The creature staggered, its shields flickering. Jake adjusted, aiming for what looked like exposed flesh between armor plates. The second burst dropped it. "Move! Move! Move!" Jake roared, reverting to battlefield command. He grabbed Ambassador Chen, half carrying her toward the emergency exits. Around them, the mighty council members fled in terror. Their psychic powers, their advanced technology, their superior evolution, none of it helped against the raw brutality of the Devourers. A group of Council security forces had set up a defensive position near the main exit. Jake recognized their weapons, energy lances that looked impressive but fired slowly. A squad of Devourers advanced on them, soaking up the hits. Jake dropped to one knee, bracing his carbine. The magnetic rounds might not penetrate their shields directly, but shields were designed for energy weapons. Physical projectiles operated on different principles. He fired controlled bursts, watching for patterns in their shield fluctuations. There. A half-second gap when they moved. Jake adjusted his timing and put 3 rounds through a Devourer's head during the gap. It dropped, and he was already shifting to the next target. "How?" a Korthax security officer hissed. "Your primitive weapons?" "Less talking, more shooting," Jake growled. Dropping another Devourer. His ammunition counter was dropping fast. Standard combat load wasn't designed for extended firefights. The Council security forces were falling back, their formation breaking. Jake saw the problem. They were too used to ceremonial duty, too reliant on their technology. When that technology failed, they had nothing to fall back on. A Devourer war form smashed through the defensive line. This one was bigger, more heavily armored. Energy weapons splashed harmlessly off its shields. It raised a weapon that looked like it could vaporize half the corridor. Jake moved without thinking. The grenade on his belt was old tech, chemical explosive with a magnetic attachment. He armed it and rolled it across the floor. The magnetic field grabbed onto the Devourer's leg armor. The creature had 2 seconds to look down in confusion before the explosion took its leg off at the knee. As it toppled, Jake put 6 rounds through its head. "Fall back by squads," Jake barked at the panicking security forces. "Overlapping fields of fire! You big guy!" He pointed at a 4-armed Thraxian. "Drag the wounded! Everyone else, covering fire!" To his surprise, they listened. Maybe it was the tone of absolute authority, or maybe it was because he was the only one actually killing devourers. The retreat became organized, disciplined. They reached a security checkpoint where more council forces had gathered. High Chancellor Vexthor was there, his earlier arrogance replaced by naked fear. His forearms shook as he tried to operate a communication console. "The station's defenses have failed," he said. "The devourers are jamming our distress signals. We're trapped." "No," Jake said, checking his ammunition. 3 magazines left. "We're not trapped. We're in a defensive position with multiple exit routes. Big difference." "Your primitive soldier thinks he can save us?" A Zephyrian officer sneered even through his fear. "Against devourers?" Jake ignored him, studying the tactical display. The devourers were systematically working through the station, but their pattern was predictable. They were hunters, not soldiers. They relied on fear and overwhelming force. "They're hurting us," Jake realized, "pushing us toward the central chamber, probably planning to take the council leadership alive for interrogation." "Then we're doomed," Vexthor moaned. "Not if we hit them first," Jake said. He turned to the assembled security forces. "Who has demolitions training?" Blank stares met him. These beings could manipulate energy with their minds, but didn't understand basic combat engineering. "Fine. I need every explosive device you have. Grenades, mining charges, anything that goes boom." Jake started sketching a plan on the tactical display. "We're going to turn their trap into ours." "This is madness," the Etherean delegate protested. "We should negotiate." A energy beam punched through the wall, vaporizing 2 guards. The devourers had found them. "Negotiations are over," Jake snarled. He grabbed every explosive he could find, rigging them with whatever passed for detonators. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, skills learned in Earth's war-torn regions serving him now. The devourers breached the checkpoint in force. Jake's carbine chattered, dropping 2 before they could clear the entrance. The council forces added their fire, but it was poorly coordinated. "Bounding overwatch," Jake commanded. "Half cover, half move. Basic tactics, people." He demonstrated, firing while backing toward the central chamber. When his magazine ran dry, he called, "Covering," and reloaded while others fired. It was Combat 101, but apparently revolutionary to the council forces. They reached the central chamber just as Jake's second-to-last magazine ran dry. Hundreds of devourers surrounded them now, closing in slowly, savoring their victory. "Now what, human?" Vexthor demanded. "Your primitive tactics have only delayed the inevitable." Jake smiled grimly, holding up a detonator. "Now we introduce them to humanity's oldest friend, high explosives." He'd rigged the checkpoint corridors while falling back, turning them into kill zones. The devourers, confident in their victory, had packed into those corridors. "Everyone down!" Jake hit the detonator. The explosions rippled through the station like thunder. Corridors collapsed, crushing dozens of devourers. The survivors pulled back, suddenly cautious. They'd expected easy prey and found something else entirely. In the brief respite, Jake heard something beautiful. Earth military frequencies on his helmet radio. "This is Captain Thompson, ESV Defiance, Council Station. Do you copy?" "Defiance, this is Sergeant Rodriguez. The Council is under attack by devourers, requesting immediate support." "Negative on direct support, Sergeant. Our ships can't match their firepower, but we've got 1,200 Marines ready to drop. Can you hold for 15 minutes? Jake looked at his last magazine, at the frightened faces of the galaxy's supposed elite, at the devourers regrouping for another assault. "We'll hold, sir. Rodriguez out." Vexthor grabbed Jake's arm. "Your ships are coming, but they're no match for devourer technology." "Maybe not," Jake said, slapping his last magazine home. "But they've got something the devourers don't." "What?" "Marines." The Devourers attacked again, more cautiously this time. Jake made every shot count, his rounds finding gaps in shields, weak points in armor. The Council forces fought better now, following his example, working as a unit instead of individuals. But they were being overwhelmed. Jake's carbine clicked empty. He drew his sidearm, an ancient M1911 his grandfather had carried. The .45 caliber rounds were laughably primitive, but they were all he had. A Devourer warform charged him. Jake put 7 rounds center mass, the heavy bullets staggering it just enough for a Thraxian guard to finish it with an energy lance. Then the ceiling exploded. Drop pods punched through the station's hull like meteors. Marines in full combat armor poured out, weapons already firing. The ancient battle cry of "Ura!" echoed through the chamber. What followed wasn't a battle, it was a demonstration. The Marines moved like a single organism, each squad covering the others, advancing with methodical precision. Their weapons might be primitive, but their tactics were flawless. Jake watched a fire team breach a Devourer strong point. Flashbang grenades disoriented the defenders, then the Marines swept in, rifles chattering. No hesitation, no fear, just pure trained aggression. "Impossible," Vexthor breathed. "They're just humans." But Jake saw what the Chancellor missed. The Devourers had grown used to enemies who relied on technology, who fell apart when their gadgets failed. They'd never faced humans, a species that had spent its entire evolution fighting, adapting, surviving through sheer stubbornness. The tide turned in minutes. Devourers who had terrorized the galaxy fled before soldiers carrying weapons their own ancestors might have recognized. It wasn't about technology, it was about will, training, and the absolute refusal to give up. Captain Thompson found Jake leaning against a wall, exhausted. "Good work, Sergeant. You held them." "Just doing my job, sir." Thompson looked around at the council members who stared at the Marines with a mixture of awe and fear. Funny how their tune changes when the shooting starts. The battle was over. Devourer bodies littered the chamber. The council station was saved, though damaged. And at the center of it all, human Marines stood guard, while the galaxy's elite tried to process what they'd witnessed. Vexthor approached Jake slowly, his forearms held in what might have been supplication. How did you—" "You were right about one thing," Jake said, reloading his grandfather's pistol. "Humans are primitive. We can't read minds or manipulate energy, but we've been fighting for survival since we climbed down from the trees. It's what we do." "The Council owes you a debt," Vexthor said quietly. "The Council owes every human an apology," Jake replied. "We might not be advanced, but we just saved your asses with bullets and grenades. Maybe it's time you reconsidered what really matters in this galaxy." He walked away, leaving the High Chancellor standing among the carnage, reconsidering everything he thought he knew about the primitive species from Sol 3. 3 days after the Devourer attack, Jake Rodriguez found himself in an uncomfortable dress uniform, standing before the reassembled Galactic Council. The chamber had been repaired with stunning efficiency, but Jake could still see the patches where human explosives had torn through alien architecture. Ambassador Chen stood beside him, but this time things were different. No one laughed. No one sneered. When High Chancellor Vexthor entered, his 4 eyes fixed on Jake with something that might have been respect. "Sergeant Rodriguez," Vexthor began, his voice lacking its earlier arrogance. "The Council has reviewed the combat footage from the attack. Your actions saved not only the Council members, but potentially billions of lives across the galaxy." Jake remained at attention, saying nothing. He'd learned that silence often carried more weight than words. "We've also reviewed the performance of human military forces during the engagement," continued Councillor Tikvar of the Proximans. "The efficiency displayed was unexpected." A hologram appeared in the center of the chamber, showing Marines sweeping through the station. Jake watched council members flinch as they saw humans moving with lethal precision, clearing rooms and eliminating threats with brutal efficiency. Your Marines killed more Devourers in 15 minutes than our security forces have in the past decade, admitted the Korthax delegate. How is this possible with such primitive weapons? Admiral Sarah Chen, no relation to the ambassador, had arrived that morning to represent Earth's military. She stepped forward, her gray hair pulled back severely, her uniform bearing the scars of real combat. Because we don't rely on our weapons, she said simply. We rely on our people. Explain, Vexthor commanded, though his tone was more curious than demanding. Admiral Chen gestured to the hologram. Every Marine undergoes months of training before they even touch an advanced weapon. They learn hand-to-hand combat, basic survival, small unit tactics. They're broken down and rebuilt as warriors. Your security forces train with energy weapons and shields. When those fail, they have nothing. When our technology fails, we still have trained killers. The crystalline delegate shimmered. But surely advanced technology supersedes primitive training. Does it? Jake finally spoke, breaking protocol. All eyes turned to him. During the attack, I watched a Zephyrian guard, a being who could bench press a ground car, panic and freeze when his weapon overheated. I watched an Etherean who could read minds cower in fear because mental powers don't stop bullets. Technology fails. Training doesn't. A murmur ran through the council. Ambassador Chen touched Jake's arm in warning, but Vexthor raised a hand for silence. Continue, Sergeant. Jake stepped forward. You called us primitive because we still fight with projectiles and explosives. But those Devourers, their shields were calibrated for energy weapons. They'd never faced kinetic weapons because every advanced race abandoned them centuries ago. Our primitive bullets punched right through. Moreover, Admiral Chen added, human military doctrine is based on adaptation. We've fought in jungles, deserts, Arctic conditions, underwater, and now in space. We don't have one way of fighting, we have thousands, and we choose based on the enemy. The Void Dancer delegate, who had compared humans to pets, spoke carefully. You're saying your weakness is actually a strength? We're saying we never forgot how to fight without advantages, Jake replied. Every other race here developed past the need for basic combat. You've had peace for so long, you forgot that war isn't about who has the best toys. It's about who's willing to do what's necessary to win. An uncomfortable silence settled over the chamber. These beings had looked down on humanity for being violent, primitive, savage. Now they were realizing those very traits had saved them. There's another matter, Vexthor said slowly. The Devourers retreated, but they didn't go far. Intelligence suggests they're massing for a larger assault, not just on this station, but on core worlds throughout Council space. The fear was palpable. Jake could smell it from the various alien biochemistries. Our fleets are powerful but few, admitted the Thraxian military commander. We've relied on reputation and technology to deter threats. Against a determined enemy like the Devourers, you'll lose, Admiral Chen said bluntly. Your ships are floating gun platforms with shields. One-on-one, they're superior to anything humanity has. But you've never fought a real war. You don't understand logistics, attrition, or sacrifice. And humans do? The Etherean's psychic voice dripped skepticism. We wrote the book on it, Jake said. We've had more wars than you've had first contacts. We've made an art out of destruction and survival. What are you proposing? Vexthor asked. Admiral Chen activated her own hologram. It showed human ships, ugly, functional things compared to the elegant council vessels. But Jake noticed the council members studying them intently now. Joint task forces, she said. Human tactical leadership with council technology support. Our Marines providing shipboard security and boarding parties. Your shields and weapons. Our tactics and willingness to fight. Preposterous, the Korthax delegate hissed. "Submit our forces to primitive command?" "Those primitives just saved your lives," Jake reminded him. The delegate's tail drooped. "There's one more thing," Admiral Chen said. She nodded to an aide who brought forward a sealed case. "This was recovered from the lead Devourer warform." The case opened to reveal data crystals of alien design. Vexthor's 4 arms trembled. "Those are Council encryption keys, maximum security." "How?" "Someone sold you out," Jake said flatly. "The Devourers knew exactly when and where to hit. They knew your defenses, your procedures, your weaknesses. This wasn't a random raid, it was an assassination attempt." The implications hit the Council like a shockwave. One of them was a traitor. "This is why you need us," Admiral Chen said. "Not just our soldiers, but our paranoia. Humans assume everyone's a potential threat until proven otherwise. We compartmentalize information, verify intelligence independently, and always have contingency plans. Your open, trusting society is admirable, but it's also vulnerable." Jake watched the Council members eyeing each other with new suspicion. The unity they'd taken for granted was cracking. "If we agree to this alliance," Vexthor said slowly, "what would humanity require?" "Full membership in the Council," Ambassador Chen stated. "Equal voice, equal vote, equal access to technology and trade routes." "The other members will never agree," the Void Dancer protested. "Humans are too aggressive for full membership." "Aggressive?" Jake laughed, a harsh sound in the chamber. "We just demonstrated restraint. We could have let the Devourers take you all, then negotiated with whoever was left standing. Instead, we bled for you. Marines died protecting beings who hours earlier were calling us animals." That silenced the protests. The truth was uncomfortable but undeniable. "I propose a test," Counselor Tikvar suggested. "A joint operation against a Devourer base. If human tactics prove effective on a larger scale, full membership will be granted." "And if we fail?" Admiral Chen asked. "Then it won't matter," Vexthor said grimly. "We'll all be dead or enslaved." The Council took a recess. Jake found himself on an observation deck with Ambassador Chen, looking out at the stars. Human ships hung in space nearby, rough, angular things that looked like flying bunkers compared to the Council's artistic vessels. "Think they'll agree?" she asked. "They don't have a choice," Jake replied. "They've seen what we can do with outdated equipment and determination. Imagine what we could accomplish with their technology." "That's what scares them," Chen observed. "A violent species with advanced weapons." "We're not violent," Jake corrected. "We're survivors. There's a difference." When the Council reconvened, the vote was closer than Jake expected, but ultimately in humanity's favor. The Joint Task Force would launch within the week. Human officers would train Council forces in basic combat tactics while integrating alien technology into human doctrine. As the session ended, Jake was approached by the young Zephyrian guard he'd saved during the attack. The alien stood 3 feet taller than him, but somehow managed to look small. "Sergeant," the guard said hesitantly, "I wish to learn your combat ways. My weapons failed, my strength meant nothing, but you, a smaller, weaker being, fought effectively. How?" Jake studied the alien. "What's your name?" "Zektal, Sergeant." "First lesson, Zektal. Size doesn't matter when you're properly trained. Meet me in the training bay at 0600 tomorrow. Bring friends. We'll start with basic hand-to-hand." Word spread quickly. By the next morning, Jake faced not just Zektal, but 40 Council security personnel from a dozen different species. They stood awkwardly, unsure what to expect from the human who'd saved their leaders. "Listen up!" Jake barked, falling into his drill instructor voice. "I'm going to teach you to fight, not to dance around with energy swords or rely on shields and psychic powers. I'm going to teach you to survive when everything goes wrong, when you're hurt, scared, and outgunned. Some of you won't make it through training, that's fine. Better to wash out here than die in combat. He paired them up, teaching basic strikes and blocks. It was almost comical watching a crystalline being try to grapple with a gaseous entity, but they were trying. That was what mattered. 3 hours later, they were exhausted, bruised despite safety equipment, and humbled. Several had quit, unable to handle the physical demands. But those who remained looked at Jake with something approaching worship. "This is just the beginning," Jake told them. "Fighting isn't about strength or technology. It's about will. It's about getting up when you're knocked down. It's about protecting the being next to you even if it costs your life. Humans learned this over millennia of warfare. You're going to learn it in weeks." Admiral Chen found him after the session, watching him ice his bruised knuckles. "Quite a class, Sergeant. Think they can learn?" "Some will," Jake said. "The ones who survive will be different. Harder. More like us." "Is that a good thing?" Jake considered the question. "The galaxy's about to get a lot more dangerous, Admiral. The Devourers won't be the last threat. The Council needs to stop being sheep and learn to be sheepdogs. Otherwise, the wolves will eat them alive." The first joint operation launched 5 days later. 3 human destroyers accompanied by Council heavy cruisers, targeting a Devourer supply base in a remote system. Jake commanded the Marine contingent, now augmented with his alien trainees. The operation was a test in more ways than one. Could human aggression mesh with Council precision? Could aliens learn to think like human warriors? Could trust be built between species that had mocked each other days before? As Jake suited up for the assault, Zektal approached. The Zephyrian had taken to human training with enthusiasm, his natural strength channeled into devastating close combat techniques. "Sergeant, I've been thinking about what you said, about will being more important than weapons." "And?" "My people have a saying, the mightiest fortress falls not to the strongest army, but to the most determined ant. I think I'm beginning to understand what it truly means." Jake clapped the alien on what passed for a shoulder. "Welcome to humanity's worldview, Zektal. Now let's go introduce the Devourers to it." The assault shuttles launched in perfect formation, human pilots teaching Council crews the art of combat flying. Energy weapons charged alongside magnetic accelerators, shields powered up while Marines checked chemical propellant weapons. It was a fusion of technologies and philosophies, primitive meeting advanced, creating something entirely new. The galaxy's outcasts, teaching its elite how to fight dirty and win. As they approached the Devourer base, Jake opened a general channel. "Remember your training. Trust your squad mates. When in doubt, violence of action wins the day. Some of you came here thinking humans were primitive savages. You were half right. We are savages when we need to be. Today, you need to be savages too. Today, we're all human." The assault began with Council ships providing covering fire while human shuttles punched through defensive screens. Marines and alien security forces dropped together, humans leading the charge while aliens provided support. It was brutal. The Devourers had fortified their position, turning the base into a killing ground. But Jake's mixed squads pushed forward, humans showing aliens how to use cover, how to advance under fire, how to turn the enemy's advantages against them. When a squad of Korthak's troops froze under heavy fire, human Marines grabbed them and physically dragged them forward, showing by example that motion meant survival. When human demolition charges couldn't penetrate a hardened bunker, a Thraxian used his 4 arms to create overlapping shield bubbles while Jake placed charges at critical points. The base fell in 3 hours. Devourer casualties were total. They'd learned the hard way that humans didn't take prisoners when protecting allies. Council forces had taken losses, but far fewer than any previous engagement with Devourers. More importantly, Jake watched aliens and humans treating each other as equals. Combat had a way of stripping away pretense. When you bled together, classifications like primitive or advanced became meaningless. The victory sent shock waves through both Devourer and Council space. The predators who had terrorized the galaxy for generations had been crushed by an alliance they couldn't have imagined, the galaxy's most advanced races learning to fight from its most primitive. Back on the council station, Jake found himself promoted to lieutenant colonel, advising the Joint Military Command. His training program had expanded to hundreds of eager students. Human military advisors were in demand throughout council space, but not everyone was happy with the new arrangement. Jake had made enemies among those who profited from the old order, those who preferred a weak council they could manipulate. The attempt on his life came during a training session. A void dancer delegate who'd lost significant influence appeared in the training bay, energy crackling around its form. "You've corrupted our pure society with your violence," it hissed. "You've turned our protectors into killers like you." Jake saw the attack coming, a burst of pure energy designed to vaporize him. But Zektal was faster, throwing himself between Jake and the blast. The Zephyrian's natural resistance absorbed most of it, though he still went down hard. Before the Void Dancer could attack again, Jake's students reacted, not with energy weapons or psychic powers, but with the brutal efficiency he'd taught them. The attacker was on the ground in seconds, restrained and disabled. Pure society? Jake knelt beside Zektal, checking his injuries. The alien would live. "Your pure society was built on arrogance and complacency. We didn't corrupt it. We showed you what was already broken." Security forces arrived to take the Void Dancer away. As medics treated Zektal, Jake realized the profound change that had occurred. Aliens who would have fled in panic weeks ago had responded instantly to protect one of their own, and included him in that category. "You saved me," Jake told Zektal as the Zephyrian regained consciousness. "You saved all of us first," Zektal replied. "Besides, isn't that what you taught us? We protect each other no matter the cost?" Admiral Chen appeared, having watched the entire incident. "The Council's approved full integration, Colonel. Human forces will be stationed throughout Council space. We're also getting access to their technology for reverse engineering. And in return, we teach them to survive, to fight, to stop being prey." She smiled grimly. "Ironically, by calling us savages, they've admitted they need savagery to survive what's coming." Jake helped Zektal to his feet. Around them, the mixed training class resumed their exercises. Aliens learning human combat techniques, while humans studied alien anatomy for weak points. It was a new galaxy, one where humanity's greatest weakness had become its greatest contribution. The Galactic Council had laughed at humans for being primitive warriors. Now they were begging to learn those primitive ways, because when civilization failed, when technology broke down, when the universe showed its teeth, the ones who survived were those who remembered how to fight with nothing but determination and the will to protect those beside them. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage not as conquerors or scientists, but as teachers of a very old, very simple lesson. Sometimes the most advanced thing you can do is remember how to be primitive when it counts. 6 months had transformed the galaxy. Lieutenant Colonel Jake Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the UES Tenacity, humanity's first hybrid warship. The vessel combined human design philosophy with council technology. Thick armor plating reinforced with energy shields, missile tubes alongside plasma cannons, and a crew that was 60% human, 40% alien. "Contact on long-range sensors," reported Lieutenant Zektal from his station. The Zephyrian had not only recovered from his injuries, but earned a commission in the integrated fleet. Devourer signatures, massive formation, estimate over 300 vessels. Captain Maria Santos, the ship's commander, studied the display with calm eyes. Distance? 8 light hours out, approaching the Kepler junction. If they take that hub... Zektal didn't need to finish. The Kepler junction connected 12 major trade routes. Its loss would cripple the Council economy. "Signal the fleet. Santos ordered. "All ships prepare for jump, and get me Admiral Chen." Jake moved to the tactical station, reviewing their forces. 40 ships total, 15 human vessels retrofitted with Council tech, 25 Council ships with human tactical officers aboard. It was the largest integrated fleet yet assembled, but still outnumbered nearly 8-1. Admiral Chen's image appeared on the main screen. Behind her, Jake could see the controlled chaos of the Fleet Command Center aboard the Dreadnought Resolution. "Captain Colonel, I assume you see what's heading our way?" "Yes, Admiral. The Devourers are making their big push," Santos replied. "Orders? We hold at Kepler. If they want the junction, they'll have to go through us." Chen's smile was sharp. "Time to see if our training paid off. Colonel Rodriguez, I want your Marines ready for boarding operations." "Already prepping, Admiral. We'll give them hell." The fleet jumped as one, emerging at Kepler Junction to find the defending Council forces in disarray. The station commander, an elderly Etherian named Cosmic Wisdom, was near panic. "Admiral Chen, thank the void you're here. We can't hold against such numbers. We must evacuate." "Negative," Chen cut him off. "We hold here. Colonel Rodriguez, take a shuttle to the station. You're assuming tactical command of their defenses." Jake was moving before she finished speaking. Within minutes, he was aboard a combat shuttle with a mixed squad of Marines, human and alien soldiers who'd trained together until species didn't matter, only capability. The station was chaos when they arrived. Council security forces milled about without direction, while civilian administrators argued about evacuation procedures. Jake had seen it before, paralysis in the face of overwhelming threat. "Listen up!" His voice cut through the noise like a blade. Every being in the command center turned to stare at the human who'd just taken charge. "I am Lieutenant Colonel Rodriguez, and as of now, I'm running this station's defense. Anyone who has a problem with that can file a complaint if we survive." Cosmic Wisdom floated forward, his energy form flickering with indignation. "You cannot simply assume command. Watch me." Jake turned to the security chief, a Korthax veteran named Hasisk. "Chief, what's our defensive status?" Hasisk straightened, recognizing military authority when he saw it. "Shields at full, weapon platforms charged, but we've never faced a fleet action. You're about to learn. Get every able-bodied person armed. I don't care if they're janitors or ambassadors. If they can hold a weapon, they're drafted." Jake activated his tactical display, his mind already calculating fields of fire and kill zones. "Zektal, you're with me. We need to turn this station into a fortress." For the next hour, Jake transformed the Kepler Junction from a trade hub into a military strongpoint. Elegant corridors became kill zones. Merchant bays were converted to fighter hangars. He positioned troops from a dozen species at critical choke points, pairing veterans with rookies, ensuring every position had someone who'd seen combat. "The Devourers expect easy prey," Jake told the assembled defenders. "They think numbers alone will break us. They're wrong. This station has 300 levels and thousands of compartments. We're going to make them pay for every meter." A young Proximan raised a trembling hand. "But, Colonel, we're traders and technicians, not soldiers." "You are now," Jake said firmly, but not unkindly. "Every sentient being has the capacity to fight when protecting something they love. Today you're protecting your homes, your families, your way of life. The humans have a saying, every Marine a rifleman. Today every one of you is a Marine." The Devourer fleet arrived like a plague of locusts, dropping from hyperspace in perfect attack formation. Jake watched from the command center as Admiral Chen deployed the integrated fleet. Human aggression tempered by Council precision, creating something neither could achieve alone. "All stations report ready," Hask announced, his tail no longer twitching with fear. "Colonel, I've served in security for 40 cycles, but I've never felt prepared like this." "That's the difference between security and military," Jake replied. "Security prevents problems. Military solves them, usually violently." The battle began with long-range exchanges. Council energy weapons lashed out with surgical precision, while human mass drivers filled space with kinetic death. The Devourers pressed forward, accepting losses to close the distance. "First wave incoming," Zektal reported. "Boarding craft and fighter escorts." "All defensive positions weapons free," Jake commanded. "Remember your training. Short, controlled bursts. Make every shot count." The station's defenses erupted. Where once there would have been panic, now there was discipline. Mixed teams of humans and aliens covered each other's blind spots, creating interlocking fields of fire that turned approach vectors into death traps. A Devourer breaching pod smashed through the station's hull near Jake's position. He was moving before it fully opened, his rifle already up. The first Devourer through the breach took 3 rounds center mass. The second lost its head to Zektal's newly mastered close combat techniques. "Breach team, with me!" Jake led the counterattack, his mixed squad flowing through the corridors like water. They hit the Devourers from 3 directions, using the station's own architecture against the invaders. Throughout Kepler Junction, similar scenes played out. Beings who had never known violence discovered they could be violent when necessary. A Void Dancer clerk held a critical junction for 20 minutes with nothing but a maintenance laser and determination. A group of Thraxian merchants turned their shop into a strong point, using industrial equipment as improvised weapons. But it was the integration that made the difference. When a human Marine's ammunition ran low, a crystalline engineer fabricated new rounds on the spot. When Council forces wavered, human NCOs steadied them with practiced calm. When human squads were pinned, aliens who'd learned human tactics executed perfect flanking maneuvers. "Colonel," Admiral Chen's voice crackled through the chaos. "We're holding in space, but barely. Those numbers. How's the station?" "Secure for now," Jake reported, wiping Devourer blood from his face. "But they're learning. Each wave is harder to repel." "Understood. Be advised we're detecting something big approaching. Devourer command ship, classification unknown." Jake felt a chill. The Devourers had never shown a unified command structure before. If they'd organized under central leadership, the command ship emerged from hyperspace like a metallic moon. It dwarfed even the Council dreadnoughts, bristling with weapons and surrounded by escort vessels. Worse, Jake could see tactical patterns in their movements. Someone on that ship understood warfare. "All units, priority target," Admiral Chen ordered. "If that command ship coordinates their fleet—" She was cut off as the behemoth opened fire. Beams of destruction lanced out, each one powerful enough to crack a moon. The Resolution's shields flared and died. Secondary explosions rippled along her hull. "Admiral's hit!" someone screamed. "Resolution is venting atmosphere!" Jake watched the tactical display in horror. Without Admiral Chen's leadership, the integrated fleet began to fragment. Council ships pulled back while human vessels pressed forward, the careful balance broken. "Sir," Hesk appeared at his elbow, "if the fleet fails, should we begin evacuation?" Jake thought of Earth, of humanity's long, bloody history. They'd faced impossible odds before: Thermopylae, Rorke's Drift, Chosin Reservoir. Sometimes you held not because you could win, but because running meant something worse than death. "No evacuation," Jake decided. "Signal all ships. Kepler Station is assuming fleet command. All vessels form up on us. We're going to hit that command ship with everything we have." "Colonel," Cosmic Wisdom protested, "you cannot command a fleet from a stationary platform." "The hell I can't!" Jake turned to the communication officer. "Open a channel. All frequencies." When the light indicated live transmission, Jake spoke to the entire fleet, human and alien alike. "This is Lieutenant Colonel Rodriguez. Admiral Chen is down, but the mission continues. I know you're scared. I know the odds look impossible. But I also know what we've built together these past months. Humans and council races, fighting as one. They called us primitive. And maybe we are. But primitive doesn't mean weak. It means we remember how to fight when fancy technology fails. It means we don't give up just because the odds are bad. He paused, seeing faces throughout the station watching him. Human Marines stood beside alien security, all looking to him for hope. The Devourers think they've won because they have numbers and a big ship. But we have something they don't: each other. Every human watching knows that our species survived by standing together. Every council race knows that unity brought peace to the galaxy. Today we unite those strengths. Today we show them what happens when the galaxy's warriors stand as one. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take everything that flies, shoots, or explodes and ram it down their throats. We're going to show that command ship why humans are called the galaxy's savages and why that's exactly what our allies need us to be. All ships, form assault pattern Delta 7. Station weapons, prepare for maximum rate fire. Marines, ready boarding pods. We're taking that ship. A moment of silence, then voices erupted across the fleet. Human battle cries mixed with alien war songs. The scattered formation reformed, tighter and more aggressive than before. Even damaged ships moved into position. "Colonel," Captain Santos called from the Tenacity. "That's a hell of a speech. Think it'll work?" "Ask me in an hour, Captain. If we're alive, it worked." The assault was everything Jake had trained for and more. The integrated fleet moved like a single organism, human unpredictability keeping the Devourers off balance, while Council precision maximized damage. Station weapons added their fire, turning space around Kepler into a holocaust of energy and metal. Jake led the boarding force personally. 40 assault shuttles launched from the station, each carrying mixed teams of the galaxy's finest warriors. The Devourer command ship's point defenses were formidable, swatting shuttles from space like insects. But some got through. Jake's shuttle punched through the hull amidships, disgorging Marines into the vessel's corridors. What they found surprised him. Not more drones, but actual Devourers in command positions. For the first time, they were seeing the species' leadership cast. "Push forward," Jake ordered, his rifle chattering. "Command decks got to be central and up." The fighting was brutal. These Devourers were smarter, better equipped, and fought with tactical awareness. But Jake's integrated teams had advantages, too. A human demo expert blasted through bulkheads, while a psychic Etherian scout sensed enemies through walls. Zektal's strength tore through armor that human weapons couldn't penetrate, while human flexibility got into spaces aliens couldn't reach. Level by level, compartment by compartment, they advanced. Jake lost count of how many fell, human and alien alike, dying for each other without hesitation. But they pushed forward, driven by something stronger than fear or hate. Finally, they reached the command deck. The Devourer commander stood at the center, a massive creature that looked like evolution's attempt at creating the perfect predator. Its voice, when it spoke through translators, was surprisingly cultured. "Colonel Rodriguez, we studied your tactics, your integration of species. Impressive for primitives." "Primitive enough to be standing on your bridge," Jake replied, weapon trained on the commander. Around him, his surviving troops spread out, covering all angles. "Indeed. Tell me, human, what drives your species to such violence? What makes you fight when logic says surrender?" Jake thought of all the smart answers he could give. Philosophy about human nature, evolutionary theory, survival instinct. But in the end, only one answer mattered. "We're stubborn bastards who protect our friends." The commander laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Then perhaps we underestimated you." "Very well." It moved faster than Jake expected. Centuries of evolution creating a killer beyond human capability. But Jake had something evolution hadn't given the Devourer: friends who'd die for him. Zektal intercepted the charge, his trained strength meeting raw predator power. A Korthax Marine's tail whipped around the commander's legs, while an Etherian assault trooper poured psychic static into its mind. Jake and 3 human Marines concentrated fire on its center mass. The Devourer commander was dead before it hit the deck. "Bridge secure," Jake reported, breathing hard. "Beginning shutdown of command systems." Without central coordination, the Devourer fleet faltered. Individual ships fought on, but the unity that made them dangerous was broken. The integrated fleet pressed their advantage, driving the invaders back. Hours later, Jake stood on the station's observation deck, watching Devourer ships flee into hyperspace. The losses had been terrible, nearly half the integrated fleet destroyed or damaged, thousands dead. But they'd held. Admiral Chen, recovered from her injuries though still in a hover chair, joined him. "Hell of a thing, Colonel. A ground marine commanding a fleet action from a trading post. Desperate times, Admiral. The Council's calling it the miracle at Kepler. First major victory against a Devourer fleet. They want to give you every medal they have." Jake shrugged. "Rather have our dead back." "I know. But what they did here matters. Human and alien, fighting and dying together. The footage is spreading across the galaxy. Shows of unity, integration, species that hated each other now calling themselves brothers in arms." Zektal approached, his arm in a sling but spirits high. "Colonel, the Council's approved full military integration. Every ship to have mixed crews, every unit to train in human tactics. They're even adopting Marine ranks and traditions." "Careful what you wish for," Jake warned with a slight smile. "Next thing you know, you'll be eating MREs and complaining about officers." "Too late," Zektal grinned, a distinctly human expression on his alien features. "Already started a still in the barracks. Sergeant Mendez is teaching us to make something called moonshine." Chen laughed. "God help us, we're turning the galaxy human." But Jake knew it was more than that. Humanity hadn't conquered or converted anyone. They'd simply shown the galaxy that sometimes being primitive meant remembering fundamental truths that advanced civilizations forgot. That courage wasn't about not being afraid, but acting despite fear. That strength wasn't about individual power, but standing together. That victory wasn't about superior technology, but superior will. The memorial service was held a week later. Jake stood before thousands, human and alien alike, reading names of the fallen. Each name represented someone who'd chosen to stand and fight rather than flee, who'd learned that protecting others was worth more than their own lives. "They called us savages," Jake said, his voice carrying across the silent crowd. "Said we were too primitive, too violent for civilized society. They were right. We are violent. We've been fighting since before we could write, killing each other over resources, ideology, pride, but we learned something from all that bloodshed." He paused, seeing faces both human and alien waiting for his words. "We learned that violence without purpose is meaningless, that strength without compassion is tyranny, that the only fight worth winning is the one that protects those who can't protect themselves. Today, humans and 20 other species stand together because we shared that lesson, not through words or philosophy, but through blood and sacrifice. The Devourers will be back. Others will rise to threaten peace. But they'll find something they don't expect, a galaxy that remembers how to fight, not with technology or psychic powers or genetic superiority, but with the oldest weapon in existence: unity." As the crowd dispersed, High Chancellor Vexthor approached. The leader who'd once mocked humanity now wore marine dress blues, modified for his four-armed frame. "Colonel Rodriguez, I owe you an apology. When we first met, I said humans were barely sentient, that you were the galaxy's most fragile species." "No apology needed, Chancellor. You were working with the information you had." "No, I was working with arrogance and prejudice." His 4 eyes showed genuine remorse. We measured strength by technology and psychic ability. We never considered that true strength might be the willingness to die for others, to adapt and overcome any challenge. In trying to evolve beyond violence, we nearly evolved beyond survival itself. Every species has its strengths, Jake said diplomatically. Yes, but humanity's greatest strength is also its most terrifying aspect. Vexthor gestured at the mixed groups of soldiers, species that would never have associated now sharing drinks and war stories. You don't just fight. You teach others to fight. You spread your warrior culture not through conquest, but through example. In 6 months, you've turned philosophers into soldiers, pacifists into protectors. Is that a complaint? No, it's gratitude. The galaxy needs wolves to fight other wolves. We were so busy being sheep that we forgot that truth. Humanity reminded us, painfully but necessarily. As Vexthor departed, Jake reflected on the strange path that had brought them here. A Marine sergeant, standing as security while humanity was mocked, had ended up reshaping galactic military doctrine. The species deemed too primitive for membership now trained the galaxy's elite. But the real victory wasn't military. It was the Korthax soldier teaching a human private how to use his tail in combat. It was the Etherian philosopher debating Earth poetry with a Marine sniper. It was Zektal, who'd started as a guard who'd never seen combat, now wearing lieutenant's bars and leading integrated units with distinction. Humanity hadn't conquered the galaxy. They'd done something far more profound. They'd taught it that sometimes the most advanced thing you can do is remember how to be primitive. That in a universe full of threats, the savages who stood together were the ones who survived. The Galactic Council had laughed at humans, called them backwards and violent. Now those same beings wore human military ranks, trained in human tactics, and called themselves proud to stand beside Earth's warriors. Because when the universe showed its teeth, they'd learned it was better to have savages as friends than civilized beings who'd forgotten how to bear their own fangs. Jake Rodriguez had started as a sergeant, standing guard while aliens mocked his species. He now stood as a symbol of integration, proof that the most primitive species could teach the most advanced civilizations the oldest lesson of all, that standing together, no matter the odds, was the only way to keep the darkness at bay. The galaxy would never be the same. And everyone, human and alien alike, agreed that was exactly what it needed.